Alright everyone, welcome back to Honored Madman for hopefully a bite-sized lore video. Today we're going to be talking about everybody's favorite lesser giant, EG, and just what he's so afraid of. So a little bit of background, EG is technically a troll, which in Elden Ring just means lesser giant. The trolls famously sided with Marika against their own kin, the greater giants, and it's generally believed that this betrayal is what led to Marika's victory against the giants, or at least contributed to it. Now, interestingly enough, there was a subgroup of trolls that swore allegiance to a different queen. In fact, this queen was actually a native of the mountaintops, who went down south and founded her own region of Liurnia, ruling over an academy of twisted and powerful sorcerers. Rennala offered these trolls asylum in exchange for their loyalty. They were taught sorcery and made into carrion enchanted knights that would fight side by side with their human counterparts. It's tough to say when exactly this oath was sworn. I guess it's possible that it could even predate Marika's war against the giants, since Rennala and her astrologers also came from the mountaintops. It's also possible that some were disillusioned with serving Marika after she eradicated their kin, whether or not they helped her. Some probably had a bad taste in their mouth about it and went over to Caria. But yeah, it's tough to say, but I guess it altogether doesn't really matter when the oath was sworn. The other interesting thing about Caria is it's the one region in all of the lands between that Marika couldn't beat through warfare. Try as she might, or rather try as Radagon might, they couldn't break Rennala's army. As we know, Radagon would eventually go over there and destroy the kingdom from within, but where does EG fit in all of this? So, he was either one of those knights that swore the oath to Queen Rennala or one of their descendants. I believe it said he even watched over Queen Rennala's daughter Ranni and her half-brother Blaidd when they were kids. So he clearly had the extreme trust and loyalty of the Lunar Queen. So when Ranni was forming her band of co-conspirators, EG seemed like an obvious pick. It's hard to say in what capacity he served her. We know he forged weapons for the Redmanes at one point, but that seems to have more to do with the fact that he was a smith in the employ of the Carian royal family, and Radahn is from the Carians. When it comes to Ranni though, I believe EG only offered advice and knowledge when he had it. But unlike Ranni, Blaidd, and Seluvis, EG was paranoid. He'd seen firsthand, or from firsthand sources, how Marika crushed the fire giants. It looks like she either used some kind of briar sorcery or deathblight magic to do so, but that's unrelated here, although it likely contributed in some part to EG's fears. I also think that the only reason the trolls didn't die the same way the fire giants did has to have something to do with that tombstone that's implanted in their chest, which could possibly mean that trolls are kind of undead a little bit. It wouldn't surprise me, they look like shriveled up rotten corpses walking around with giant hollowed out chests, but that's just all speculation. Anyway, one thing Ranni and her co-conspirators all have in common seems to be an affinity for Nox architecture and, well, science. Ranni's after the Fingerslayer blade, which was made by the Nox. Seluvis is obsessed with puppets, which are heavily implied to have been invented by the Nox. There's actually a bit of shared culture between the Liurnians and the Nox. I like to think it's at least somewhat possible that the Raylucarians and the Carians offered refuge to the Nox and learned some of their ways in the process after they had their home destroyed. Or Liurnia is the location of the Nox's original civilization before the Astel buried them, with the ruins of all the other civilizations like the Old Dynasty and all those crucible knights that still serve the roots of the Great Tree. Although it does appear that Nox society, if we're basing the location of their three cities as being under the area they previously once stood, then yeah, there was at least one Nox city in the Liurnian area, and there's definitely a chance that when the astrologers came down from the mountaintops, they saw some of the ruins and adopted some of the culture, maybe even picked up some of the stragglers, if there was any. I mean, think about it, the Raylucarians even have an Alabaster Lord teaching in their halls. So even though we don't see any Nox there, it wouldn't be hard to believe that there weren't Nox teaching there at some point, or at least living there or something. What I'm trying to say is there's a lot of ties between not only the Raylucarians and the Nox, but especially the Carian royal family, specifically Ranni's co-conspirators, and the Nox. Admittedly, Blaidd doesn't seem to have any Nox-like affinities, but EG sure does. He wears a Nox mirror helm, a unique one at that. He probably had to forge it to his own special proportions, while also putting his own spin on it design-wise. This is interesting because the Nox wore these helms to ward off the influence of the Two Fingers, basically to keep the metaphorical Eye of Sauron off of their back so they can plot in peace. And this is probably the same reason that EG wanted one of these, because as Ranni's advisor, he probably knows that Marika had helped her pull off the theft of the Rune of Death. Personally, I think Marika didn't know that Ranni was going to do her little witch magic, possibly even using Godwin's soul as part of the collateral for this presumptive ritual. I'm getting a little into heavy speculation here, but what I mean to say is that Ranni and Marika did work together, but something Ranni did went counter to Marika's whole reason for helping Ranni in the first place, which resulted in all the co-conspirators and Ranni having to go into hiding. Now, it's obviously easier for Ranni now that she's sort of disembodied to stay in hiding, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the Black Knife assassins, who were all said to be Newman women with close ties to Marika, aren't still on the hunt for them. In fact, since the theft of the Rune of Death led to the Night of Black Knives, which in turn led to the Shattering, which, as we all know, led to Marika being trapped in the Erdtree with Radagon, Marika effectively disappeared too, so Ranni and her crew have no idea what she's up to, or what kind of retaliation she could presumably be planning. Little do they know, though, that she's sort of stuck in the Erdtree in pieces. And also, to make things worse, Ranni's shadow, Blaidd, was created by the Two Fingers and Greater Will as a shadow for Ranni so long as she does what the Golden Order wants, and guess what? She's moved against them in some pretty crazy ways. Normally when this happens, I imagine that the Greater Will just activates the shadow's kill programming and sends them against their Empyrean. But Blaidd was a bit different. He swore his allegiance to Ranni and Ranni alone, basically in spite of his own programming, and he managed to serve her for a very long time without defecting or going haywire because of his programming. This could have either been because he was very strong, or maybe Ranni's magic was helping out in some way or form, but this would all change when Ranni would finally ice out her iteration of the Two Fingers with the Fingerslayer blade. Iji seemed to know this, so he took precautions to imprison Blaidd in the Never Jail to keep him from turning on Ranni and his fellow conspirators, without, killing him, because Iji still viewed Blaidd as a friend and he didn't want to kill him. He was just put in this very difficult situation of having to imprison his good buddy because he knew that the programming in his poor little dog brain could bring us all to ruin. And it's a good thing he did, because Blaidd does indeed go haywire and ends up needing us to put him down. So you can say what you want about Iji, but all of his fears turned out to be pretty fucking valid. Look, I've probably veered off into heavy speculation more than a few times, but the whole takeaway today is that Iji was insanely scared of retaliation from Marika and the Black Knife assassins, and we see near the end of Ranni's questline that all of these fears were indeed founded, when they try to kill Blaidd and successfully kill Iji, which appears to be Elden Ring's version of a Goodfellas-style assassination. At least he took a couple of them with him, and I guess it is possible that he black flamed himself so as to not give his enemies the satisfaction. That's how I'd like to think Iji went out. But yeah, that's my take on Iji. Sorry if it got a little rambly at times. I just saw somebody slandering him on some comment thread somewhere, and I was like, I think I'm going to make a little bite-sized video about Iji and his fears. So as always, I hope you guys found this one entertaining, or at least somewhat informative. If I got anything wrong, let me know in the comments. If you liked the video, please like it. If you disliked it, please dislike it. And if you like hearing me ramble on for varying amounts of time, please consider subscribing to the channel. It really helps me out. And before we go, let's have our outro, shall we? And then some final thoughts. I got a couple more of these smaller videos I want to put out, but I'm going to try and finish the Radagon one before I do the next bite-sized video. There's also some more Legend of Zelda coverage coming as soon as I can record footage, so I'll see you guys soon. As always, be safe and have a good one.
My purpose is nearing its end. I've served Lady Ranni for as long as I can remember. It has been a long and wondrous journey. Now Lady Ranni is in your hands. I pray that you serve her well, and to the very end.